I am impressed that you made your way through the rain and the cold after a wonderful and long day and evening yesterday and night. Thank you for showing up. As you all hopefully realized from the productive day at the symposium yesterday, Alexandra and I selected single words from individual presentations to serve as titles for each panel dialogue. These words, terms, are possible but not necessary ways of focusing the discussions of the disparate topics addressed within each panel, or again, each dialogue. Contact zones, encounters, speculations, moments, and now confrontations. When we enter this exhibition and this fantastic exhibition and festival commemorating das kleine Fernsehspiel, das kleine, as Elizabeth so nicely put it yesterday, we are perhaps put in a celebratory mood since we're overwhelmed by the astounding number of fantastic films and filmmakers this small, poorly funded program series on the public service second German television channel has supported since 1963. But we come in the symposium not just to praise das kleine. Again, kind of Elizabeth maybe in a friendly, collegial way, cutting it down to size. So we come not just to praise das kleine. We're not necessarily here, however, to bury it either, as we might surmise after Irmer's talk yesterday, and not to take away from the important critique. But we are definitely here to critically appraise its contributions to television and film history, both within the context of a German policy of public programming and in conjunction with German and European cultural diplomacy. This panel dialogue is intended to expand our investigation of das kleine by situating it in relation to, or by confronting it with, media and cultural projects of the Goethe-Institut and the European broadcasting channel Arte La Lucarne. And I'm thrilled that we have two guests this morning who are ideal for facilitating this critical dialogue. I've been following both of their work for a while now with great admiration. Merv Espina's work became known to me more recently, particularly through his interesting research project that he's been conducting over the past 2 years called Media Encounters, investigating Goethe-Institut media workshops around the world, but I think with a focus on Southeast Asia, but he'll talk more about that. Merv is based in the Manila region of the Philippines, and he thankfully arrived yesterday from a conference in Shanghai, and is also a member of the Academy of the Arts of the World in Cologne. So Merv, I think, brings a perspective, a global perspective, if you will, a situated global perspective to our questions today, and I'm very excited to hear him speak. Please welcome Merv Espina.
Thank you so much for the much too kind introduction. Okay. I like time constraints, so I'm gonna keep this within time. They were working. So first of all, thank you very much to Marc and Alexandra for inviting me here, and it's so nice to be in this context with other researchers and to see my research in another German context, because I wasn't actually very much aware of the Das Kleine and this film production. I didn't even know that some of the films that I was already familiar with were produced through this initiative. So I had a very interesting time listening to all the panels yesterday, and I'm sorry I wasn't so engaged because I'm just like managing to be in this time zone at the moment. And second of all, thank you also to Luis for, of course, admin and the tech for helping me. And I also want to thank Tobias Herring, who's here, who's been instrumental in my research, particularly through the initiative I'm stalling as I mentioned, but with Reselected and the Oberhausen. And second of all, I want to congratulate all of you for waking up to the situation. Thank you for joining us on a Sunday morning with this. Okay. So first of all, before I dive into the ongoing research, I want to talk about the research that actually it sparked out from. So in 2014, I started a research project with another artist, Shireen Seno, which was focused on tracking down artists' film and video works in the Philippines or from the Philippine diaspora. And we didn't know it at that time, but a lot of the works, even stuff that we have seen just recently, are missing, or that that even if we do possibly find the actual works, they're either inaccessible because we don't have the technology to play them back anymore because they're in analog film and video, and or they're copies of copies of copies, and there were a lot of missing things. So it became a kind of an accidental archive. It's called the Kalampag Tracking Agency. And again, thank you, Arsenal. So I think Shireen was here on a DAAD recently, and some of this research was shown in the Arsenal just this year. So during the lockdown in late 2020, I started to expand on this because as we showed the works that we found in the Kalampag Tracking Agency, a lot of people were saying like, hey, Goethe-Institut, Maria Vedder, Christoph Ionesco, they came true. They actually did a lot of stuff here as well. So I started to get in touch with the different artists that were part of this history. First, starting, of course, in Manila. So starting with German artists that conducted a lot of these workshops and co-productions in Manila. And that was the base of the research. So I reached out to Christoph, for example, to Ingo Petschke, and it was necessary also for me to do this because the historiographic situation in the Philippines, and also the if you're reading along, and how funding is also structured is very much contained per region, and it's always these like national frameworks of Philippines and the Philippine identity, or the region, Southeast Asia, or the Association for Southeast Asian Nations. And a lot of this funding is coming externally, of course, because the Philippines doesn't really have that much cultural funding to begin with. And so by following the flight paths of these different German artists that were conducting these workshops, you have a kind of a different network and a different association of things. You have different disparate geographies that you didn't know were related. Like, what is the relationship between Manila and Lagos? What is the relationship between La Paz and Hong Kong, for example, or Rio de Janeiro and Seoul? So this is the kinds of associations that I wanted to tease out, and how they could possibly also influence practice and different communities of practice, and the different aesthetics and tendencies that they could have possibly also encouraged. So um, by also following these German artists, we also, of course, have to follow the works. So these are German-produced works, Goethe-Institut. So naturally, a lot of these works were also going to different festivals here in Germany, but of course not limited to Germany, a lot of them. Like for example, this video work, Ganga, this is the first video work by an important Indian video artist, Ain Lal. And it actually, the first international festival that it went to was in Amsterdam. I think it was in Amsterdam at that time, the Worldwide Video Festival. And of course, like a lot of these works conducted between like workshops in the 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of them are very important seminal works for some of the artists. So who were the different artists that were conducting these workshops, and the German artists, and who were the different artists from the different localities? So in the Philippines, of course, there's Rox Lee, and maybe a bit more known in the auteur world is Lav Diaz. In Hong Kong, it was really interesting because a lot of the people that they collaborated with started institutions like Zuni Ikosohedron in 1983. They conducted a workshop, a two-part workshop, and that led to the first video art exhibition in Hong Kong in 1983, and this was with Barbara Hamann. Barbara Hamann earlier in 1981 also went to Sao Paulo, and I speculate that some of her associates and former students also went on to start Video Brazil, which is an important video art biennial that's still happening right now. They just had another edition this year. And actually the title of this ongoing research, Media Encounters, came from this Goethe-Institut Hong Kong project in 1983-84. The second part of that project was resulted in a diptych film with Ingo Petschke and Jim Shum. The second part of the title, Cultural Confrontations, actually comes from a 1993. It's not working anymore. 1983. It came from a 1993 Oberhausen focus theme. Confrontation of cultures, and it was actually the first time that we see a retrospective of a lot of these Goethe-Institut produced works. And Tobias was like went on to go through the archives before I arrived last year, and found some really interesting materials, a lot of interesting associations and artists that we didn't really know had affiliations with the Goethe-Institut. The one that really got me excited was the Rax Media Collective. So Rax Media Collective's first work in 1991 was actually produced through Goethe-Institut workshop conducted by Johann Feint, who works now as a cinematographer. This is the work that Rax made before the name existed, and this is the work that actually made them decide to become a collective. So it was very important for them. And then so when I was asking them like, hey, tell me about this workshop, they said like, oh, actually the workshop's great, but also the people that was also in the workshop is equally as exciting, because besides them, it was also Amar Kanwar in the workshop. And maybe you know Amar Kanwar's work if you're like cinema heads. But so this was just like the Delhi situation. But unfortunately, this first work of Rax, like a lot of these other works, are missing. We don't know where they are. We didn't even really know like that they were funded by the Goethe-Institut to begin with. So to to go back, like in the confrontation of cultures, it served as a kind of checklist, both the ones that really made it into the final to the final screening program, and the ones that didn't make it. The ones that didn't make it are, of course, equally as exciting. But you can see also the different flight paths of the different instructors. Krzysztof Janecko was, of course, the most prolific, and you can see two of the workshop films by Janecko in the screen right now. And Janecko went to Manila in 1988 to 89, and then 89 to 90. And it was through the exposure of some of the films in Toronto, in the Experimental Film Congress in Toronto in 1989, that directly inspired in the Rio de Janeiro workshop in 1990. So Manila, 88 to 90, two workshops, and then Glasgow in 1990, and then Rio de Janeiro 1990, and then 1992 was his busiest year because he went to Hong Kong, Bangkok, and Seoul. In Bangkok, some important artists that were part of it was Manit Sriwanijpum, who works mostly now as a contemporary artist and photographer, known for his Pink Pants series, and Pimpa Katawira, like important organizer, film festival organizer, and feminist filmmaker. In Seoul, there was Kim Yon-tae and Park Chan-wook's younger brother before he went to grad school, Park Chan-kyung. So really interesting associations, and like, but where are those films? And then in Rio de Janeiro, from the workshop, I only really knew one film because it made it to the Oberhausen '93. But I was in Rio de Janeiro just recently, and we found like there's actually 10 films that were made, and we found more or less, I think, seven of the 10. So we're still trying to look for them. So the way that I'm trying to do this research is by going to the different archives and people here in Germany and getting material from them. The two works here, Ganga and In Search, were a product of the Maria Vedder workshops in New Delhi in 1991. Maria Vedder came to Manila in 1986, which is the same year as the EDSA revolution. So that meant that there was no production being made because she landed at the heart of at the time of like the revolution was happening. So she was also out there with the potential students and collaborators in the streets and the protests. That year was also the year that Harun Farooqi came to Manila, and of course, also no production was made. But in '91, she also went to New Delhi, where she made a workshop that resulted in that Ain Lao work and the one that you saw in Search, which is an early computer animation work. And it also begs the question for me, like who determines canon? Like who determines which works get selected and canonized in a way, right? Because of their association with the different festivals here, like and what retains in people's memories. In Search, no one was searching for it. We didn't know it was there. But when we showed it for the first time in Bangalore earlier this year during a festival called Experimenta, this was the work that people really gravitated to, because Ganga, they could predict why it was shown, because one, it featured Indian classical dance and a woman in India. So okay, we kind of know why it was selected. But the one that but In Search, computer graphics in 1991 by an artist we don't really associate with that. Exciting. So, and then another question is like, who were these works actually being made for? Because sure, it started the careers of some artists, but they didn't really have, perhaps in a lot of the context, they didn't really it might have been too early. They didn't have that kind of momentum yet. Like Hong Kong is an exception. Manila is an exception because like there was an institution making and community making in those terms. But in India, I don't really think so. The support network wasn't there yet. It happened a few years later, and the other thing I want to get at is the the kind of relationship that the Goethe-Institut should have with these works, because one would think that the Goethe-Institut would be would keep a list of these things, of these co-productions. Like I think I met someone yesterday who was keeping a catalog of a directory of the works produced through the Das Kleine, but none exists in the Philippines. None exists for the Goethe Institute. There's one in the Philippines. There's one in different locations. But I went to the basement of the Goethe Institute in Munich, where a lot of the German artists were saying that we had to file reports after these workshops, so they should have a record. But where are those records? The person that had a kind of institutional memory of these things. So it's not really an institution; it's a person in the institution that had a memory. She's gone. So, and it's a battle of against time. A lot of these people are starting to disappear, and a lot of the time, it's like a lot of you working with like this kind of history, this very elusive kind of history, and working with archives or the prompting of archives. It's we tend to find things that we also weren't even thinking of looking for. So a lot of the time, like a lot of you, I'm grasping in the dark for the shapes of an absence. And with that, I conclude this presentation, and thank you. And I look forward to Rasha, Salti, and the conversation later. Thank you.